In this lecture, I am going to create get API endpoint in Node.js to get list of blocks with search, filter, sorting and pagination functionalities. So let's open our block.route.js file to add a new route for our getBlocks API endpoint. Route method will be get and URL will be our base URL /blocks. We do not need to provide /blocks here because I already provided /blocks before every block route. And it will execute block controllers list method. Now let's open our block controller and then let's export a method called list, and let's get request and response as a parameter to this method, and I'll store all the blocks to a variable called blocks, and we can get all the blocks with the help of block model. So I'll make some changes here. I'll make this B as capital letter for better code readability. Also I'll make some changes inside this create method where I used our block model. Now we can get all the blocks with the help of block model find method, and this find is a mongoose method, and inside this find method we need to provide the conditions. So I'll create a new variable called query where I'll store all the conditions. This will be a blank object now. Let's provide this condition inside this find method. This will return as a promise, so let's call await here. Because we are using await here, we need to add async before this method. And after getting all the blocks, I will return a JSON response with message block successfully fetched, and I will return this blocks data to this data key. Now let's execute our getBlocks API endpoint from Postman. Let's open a new tab here, and then let's provide the request URL, which will be our base URL /blocks. You see, now we are getting all the blocks to this data key. Now I am going to load category data and user data for each block. So we can load category data and user data for each block with the help of populate method. And inside this populate method, we need to provide the path. If I open our block model, you see we stored category ID to this category field, and the type of this field is mongoose schema types object ID. So if I provide this category inside this populate method, this will load category data for each block, and I will also load user data for each block. So I'll provide created by here inside this populate method to load user data for each block. Now let's execute our getBlocks API endpoint again. You see, now we are getting category data and user data for each block. Okay, now let's add search functionalities to our getBlocks API endpoint. Suppose an user is trying to search the block with a keyword called test, then this API endpoint should return only those blocks which has this test in the title or in the short description. So first of all, I will check if keyword is present inside our request URL, then I will add some conditions to this query object. Okay, so I am going to add all conditions, and this will be an array, and inside this array we will provide the conditions. I am going to search the block with this regex method, and I am providing keyword here. So this condition will return only those blocks which has this keyword in the title or in the short description. Okay, and I am providing options to I for case insensitive data. Now if I execute our getBlocks API endpoint with a keyword called 1, this should return only those blocks which has this 1 in the title or in the short description. You see, we are getting only this block now. Now let's change it to 2. You see, now we are getting different block which has this 2 in the title or in the short description. So our search functionality is working. Now let's add category ID was filtration. So I'll add this code here. So I'll check if category is present inside our request URL, then what I'll do, I'll add category conditions to our query object, because we have category ID to our blocks collection. You see, we have a field called category inside our block model, right? So that we can add this category conditions to our query object, and we are providing the category data here. This will be category ID. So let's provide category ID here. I am providing suppose category ID. Now this API endpoint should return only those blocks which has this category ID. Now let's provide another category ID. Suppose let's take science category ID, and then let's provide the category ID here. You see now we are getting only those blocks which has science as a category. So our category ID wise filtration is also working. We cannot filter the data with the help of find method by category slug or category name, okay, because inside our blocks collection we have category ID to this category field. Now I'm going to tell you that there are also some other method like skip and limit, which is very helpful for pagination. And inside this skip we need to provide the skip, and then inside this limit we need to provide the limit. Suppose we want to get first 2 record, then I will provide 0 as skip and 2 as limit. Now if I execute this endpoint again without this category, this should return only first 2 record. You see we are getting only first 2 record. So this is very helpful for paginations. And if you want to sort the data, then we need to call sort method. And inside this sort method we need to provide an object, and inside this object we need to provide the sort by field and then sort order. This will be -1 for descending and +1 for ascending. Okay, now let's execute this endpoint again. So now it is returning the latest block in the first position. Okay, but I am not going to use this find method to get the data. I am going to use mongoose aggregate method. So let's comment out this code, because mongoose aggregate is a very powerful function. Okay, and this mongoose aggregate does provide some functionalities which is very helpful. So I am going to use mongoose aggregate method to get the data. So I will create a new variable called query, where I will store all the queries inside this array. And the first query I am going to make, I am going to load user data for each block. So with the help of mongoose aggregate method, we can load relationship data with the help of lookup method. And inside this lookup we need to provide an object, and inside this lookup we need to provide the relationship data. So we are going to load user data from users collection, and the local field is created by inside our block model. You see we stored user ID to this created by field, that's why I am providing local field as created by, and the foreign field is _ID, and we are going to load user data to this creator field. Okay, now let's provide this query inside mongoose aggregate method. So I will store all the blocks to a variable called blocks, and I will call block model aggregate method, and inside this aggregate I need to provide the conditions. So let's provide this query variable to this aggregate method. This will return us also a promise, so let's use await here. And after getting all the blocks, I will return a JSON response with message block successfully fetched, and I will return these blocks to this blocks key inside this data object. Let's remove this lines of code. Now let's execute our getBlocks API endpoint. You see now we are getting different JSON for each block. If you notice that we are getting user data to this creator field inside an array, but we want a data as an object. So for that what I will do, I will use unwind method. So let's add unwind inside this query array, and we are going to unwind this creator array, that's why I am providing $creator. Now this should return the user data to this creator as an object. Okay, now let's load category data for each block. So I will add another lookup method, and I will provide all the details to load our category details. We are going to load category data from categories collection, and the local field will be category, which is inside our block model. You see we stored category ID to this category field, that's why I am providing local field as category, and the foreign field will be _ID, and we are going to load category data to this category details field, and I am going to unwind this category details to get category data as an object. Now let's execute this endpoint again. You see now we are getting category details along with user details for each block. Now let's add search functionalities to our getBlocks API endpoint. So I'll check if keyword is present inside our request URL. Then what I will do, I'll add some conditions to our query object, and I'm going to add match condition, and inside this match I'm providing for condition. So this code will return only those block which has this keyword in the title or in the category details name field. You see, with the help of mongoose aggregate method we can search the data from our relationship models. Okay, but with the help of find method we cannot do this. So with the help of mongoose aggregate method we can achieve this, but without aggregate method we cannot do this. Okay, that's why I'm using this aggregate method. I already told you that mongoose aggregate is very powerful method. Okay, and I'm providing regex here, and I'm providing the keyword. Okay, now this code will return only those blocks which has this keyword in the title or in the category details name field. Now let's call this getBlocks API endpoint with a keyword called 1. You see, now we are getting this block because this block has 1. Sorry, I'm providing category 2. So we are getting this block because this block has 2 in the title. Let's provide keyword as sports. This will return only those blocks which has sports in the title or in the category details name field. You see, now we are getting all of this block because all of this block has sports in the title or in the category details name field. We can also add user details name field here also if we want to search the data from our users collection. So what we need to do, we need to add this creator. We need to add this creator here, and suppose we want to search the user's email, then we'll provide this email field here, and then we need to add this regex, and then we need to provide the request keyword here also. And then suppose I want to search the block with a keyword or this email, then this will return those blocks which has this email in the title or in the category details name field or in the creator email field. Okay, because all of this block has this email as the creator email, that's why it is returning all of this block. Okay, now I'm going to add category slug-wise filtration. So what I will do, I will check if category present inside our request URL, then I will add an object to our query object, and I will provide match here, and then I will provide this code. So this will return only those blocks which has this category as a category slug. So first of all I will check if there is any category slug is present inside our request URL. Let's provide a category slug called sports here, and then execute this endpoint. Now see, it is returning only those blocks which has sports as a category slug. Now let's provide category slug to science. You see, now it is returning only those blocks which has science as a. No, it is not working. So I think I need to save the file, right? Yes. So let's execute this endpoint with category to science. You see, now we are getting only this record because only this block has science as a category. So our category slug wise filtration is also working. Now I'm going to add user ID wise filtration. Suppose user ID is present inside our request URL, then how we can filter the data with the user ID. Let's provide user ID, this ID. So I'm adding an object to this query variable, and I'm providing match here, and then we're providing the created by field because we stored user ID to this created by field, and because we are filtering the data by ID, that's why we need to provide the user ID to this mongoose types object ID field. Okay, otherwise filter is not working for our ID field. Okay, because we are using mongoose library here, let's get mongoose library here. Let's record our mongoose library. Now this code should work. So I'm providing this user ID here. Execute this endpoint. You see, now we are getting all the blocks because all the block has this user ID as creator ID. So our user ID was filtration is also working. And then let's create a variable called tutor where I store total record, and we can find the total record with the help of our models count documents method. And inside this count documents we need to provide the conditions. I am providing all the conditions I created for our GetBlocks API endpoint. Okay, now this will hold the total record, and then I'll create another variable called page, and I'll store whatever the page user is providing through this request URL, or the default page will be 1. Okay, and I'm typecasting the page variable. I'm typecasting to integer with the help of %, method, and then I'll create another variable called per-page, and similarly I'm checking if per-page is present inside our request URL, then I'll typecast the per-page variable to integer with the help of %, method, or the default per-page will be 10. And then I'll create another variable called skip, which will be our current page minus 1 multiplied by per page. So for the first page this will be 0 because page is 1, that means for the first page 1 minus 1, that is 0, multiplied by per page, it will return as 0. For the second page it will be 10, and for the third page it will be 20. 3 minus 1 is equal to 2, multiplied by 10 is equal to 20. Okay, and then I will push this skip and limit to this query object. Okay, so we need to push the skip data to this skip key, and we need to push this limit as per page. Okay, now I'll add some metadata for our paginations to this data object. So what I'll do, I'll add a key called meta to our data object, and I'll provide all the paginated information to this meta object. We are providing total record, current page, per page, and then total pages. Suppose we have 8 record inside our block collection, then if I try to get the data, if I try to get 2 record per page, then total pages will be 4 because 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4, and I am returning the sale data. Now if I execute our GetBlocks API endpoint by adding page as 1 and per page as 2, then let's check what we are getting. Now we are getting only 2 record per page. You see, the total is 8, current page is 1, per page is 2, and total pages is 4 because 8 divided by 2 is equal to 4. Let's change it to page number 2. Let's check what we are getting. You see, we are getting different block, and now the current page is 2 and per page is also 2. So these data are not changing, but this current page is changing. Okay, so our pagination is also working. So now what I will do, I will add project to our query object. So if we want to get some actually if you want to select some fields for our blocks object, then how we can achieve this? Suppose we want only this title and short description and description field for our block, then how we can achieve this? For this, what I need to do, we need to add project to our query object. Okay, that's why I'm adding this project to our query object, and inside this project we need to provide the field what we want to select for our blocks. Suppose we want to select title field, description field, image field, then we need to provide this like this way, and I'm going to load short description also for each block. So I'll add short description here, and I'm going to load name and Slack field only for category details, and I'm going to load email, first name and last name field for our user details. So if I execute our GetBlocks API endpoint again, you see now we are getting only this record for our block data, and this record for our user data, and this record for our category data. Okay, now let's add short functionalities. So I'll check if any sort by field present inside our request URL, and if sort order is present inside our request URL, then I'll provide this sort by field to our sort object, and I'll provide the sort order to this sort object value. Okay, and this will be 1 for ascending, -1 for descending, and then I'll provide this sort object to this query object sort key. This will sort the data, and the default sort by will be, there will be some default sorting which will be created at field, and the sort order will be descending. That's why I'm providing -1 here. Okay, now let's provide sort by here. Suppose I want to sort by title and sort order as descending. You see, now we are getting this block in the first position. Let's change it to ascending. We are getting this title in the first position because this title has A in the first character. So our sort functionality is also working. Now if I change this, I think if I remove this sort by and sort order, you see we are getting the default default sorted data, which is our created field. Okay, so our default sort is also working. Now what I will do, I will put all this code inside a try catch block. Before that, if you notice the JSON object, you see we are not getting image URL for each block. If you remember, when we are using this find method, we are getting image URL for each block. Now we are using aggregate method. That's why we are not getting image URL for each block. We have this virtual field inside our block model, yet we are not getting this image URL for every block. So for that, what I need to do? For that, I need to call hydrate method for each document. So I'm going to call map method. I'm going to loop all the record for these blocks, and then we need to call hydrate method for each block. So let's copy this code and paste here. So I'm going to call hydrate method for each document. Now if I execute our getBlocks API endpoint again, you see now we are getting image URL for each block. Okay, so our getBlocks API is almost completed. Now the last thing I am going to do here, I'll put all this code inside a try catch block. Suppose we are getting some error from this code, then we should return the error, right, in the JSON response. That's why I'll put all of this code inside a try catch block, and inside this catch block we can get the error, and if we receive any error, then I'll return the error to JSON response. So take the code from our create method and let's use it inside our list method. Okay, and I'm going to take all this code and I'll put all this code to our try block. So if any error occurs, then this should return the error data to this JSON response. Okay, so that's it for our getBlocks API endpoint. In the next lecture, I'm going to tell you how we can create block details API endpoint.